the Civil War traveler. In 1863, a photograph was taken at the dedication of the Gettysburg National Cemetery, the same event where Abraham Lincoln delivered the Gettysburg Address. The photo shows a crowd gathered to hear Lincoln speak. In the crowd, clearly visible, is a man wearing modern clothing, a style that wouldn't exist for another century. The man is wearing what appears to be a modern casual shirt, with a design that looks like a printed logo or graphic. His hair is cut in a contemporary style. He's holding what several analysts believe is a modern camera or smartphone, rectangular, the wrong size and shape for 1863 photography equipment. The photograph itself has been extensively analyzed. It's not digitally altered. The image shows the expected degradation and characteristics of genuine 1860s photography. The National Archives verified the photo's authenticity. It's a real photograph from 1863, but the man in modern clothing remains unexplained. Some have suggested he's wearing unusual period clothing that coincidentally looks modern, but clothing historians who examine the image say no clothing from the 1860s matches what he's wearing. The fit, the style, the apparent synthetic fabric, all are wrong for that era. The object he's holding is equally problematic. In 1863, cameras were large, bulky devices requiring tripods and long exposure times. The handheld cameras that would become common decades later were still distinctly different from the rectangular object this man is holding. Its size and shape match a modern smartphone or digital camera far better than any 1860s technology. What makes this case particularly intriguing is that the man appears to be documenting the event, holding up his device as if taking photographs or video of Lincoln's speech. This suggests he understood the historical significance of what he was witnessing. Several researchers have tried to identify the man using facial recognition, software, and comparison with Civil War records. No match has been found. He doesn't appear in any other photographs from the era, military records, or census data. He appears in this one photograph, clearly out of time, and then vanishes from history. Skeptics argue the object could be a flask, a book, or some other period-appropriate item that coincidentally looks modern. But this doesn't explain the clothing, the haircut, or the way the man is positioning the object as if photographing the crowd. The photograph has been nicknamed the Gettysburg Time Traveler and remains one of the most compelling photographic anomalies, suggesting someone from another time period witnessed one of history's most famous moments. The Immortal Count. In the 1970s, a man appeared in Paris claiming to be Count of Saint-Germain, the same Count of Saint-Germain who had been a prominent figure in French high society in the 1700s. The original Count of Saint-Germain was famous for claiming to be centuries old, for his knowledge of alchemy, and for his mysterious origins. He allegedly died in 1784, but in 1972, a man presented documents to French officials claiming to be the Count, complete with family records, property deeds, and personal items that appeared to date from the 18th century. The documents included signatures that matched the original Count's handwriting with remarkable precision. What makes this case extraordinary is that the 1972 claimant looked identical to portraits of the 18th century Count. Not similar, identical. The same distinctive facial structure, the same unusual eye color, even the same specific mole on his left cheek that appears in authenticated 18th century portraits. The man possessed knowledge about 18th century French court life that historians said was remarkably detailed, including personal anecdotes about Marie Antoinette and Louis XV that weren't in any historical records, but were later verified through newly discovered documents. He owned items that authentication experts confirmed dated to the 1700s, including a ring inscribed with the Count's personal seal, handwritten letters in the Count's distinctive handwriting, and a musical composition signed by the Count that matched his known musical style. Most intriguingly, he knew the location of a hidden cache of items that the original Count of Saint-Germain had mentioned in his writings. The cache was found exactly where the 1972 man said it would be, in a location that hadn't been recorded in any accessible historical documents. French authorities investigated the man's identity extensively. They found no birth records, no previous address history, no evidence of his existence before 1972. He appeared, made his claim, demonstrated his knowledge and possessions, and then disappeared again after a few months, leaving behind only photographs and the authenticated items. The original Count of Saint-Germain had told associates in the 1700s that he was over 2,000 years old and had learned the secret of immortality. Most dismissed this as eccentricity or fraud, but his appearance in court records spans from the 1710s to 1784, nearly 70 years, with witnesses consistently describing him as appearing to be about 45 years old throughout that entire period. If the 1972 claimant was indeed the same person, he looked essentially the same as he had 200 years earlier, still appearing to be in his mid-40s. The repeating fighter pilot. In 1940, RAF pilot records documented a squadron leader named John Smith, who flew Spitfires during the Battle of Britain. Smith was noted for his exceptional flying skill, his knowledge of German aircraft capabilities, and his uncanny ability to predict enemy tactics. He survived the battle and disappeared from records in 1941. In 1968, a man named John Smith appeared at RAF Hendon and requested access to historical records about Battle of Britain pilots. He claimed to be researching his grandfather. While examining documents, he corrected several historical errors in the official records. Specific details about engagements, tactics, and aircraft performance that even military historians didn't know. When asked how he knew these details, Smith said his grandfather had told him. But when researchers looked up the 1940 squadron leader, John Smith, they found something disturbing. The 1968 John Smith was identical to the 1940 pilot. Not a family resemblance, identical. The same distinctive scar on his right temple, the same unusual pale blue-gray eyes, the same proportions and facial structure. Further investigation revealed that both men had the exact same pilot's license number, an impossibility since license numbers aren't reused. Both men listed the same hometown in Scotland, though the 1968 man claimed he'd never been to Scotland in his life. The 1968 John Smith possessed a pilot's logbook that appeared to date from 1940, filled with handwritten entries in faded ink describing combat engagements during the Battle of Britain. The handwriting matched the authenticated signature of the 1940 squadron leader, Smith. The logbook contained details about missions that matched RAF records perfectly, including several classified missions that weren't publicly known in 1968. Most compellingly, the 1968 Smith demonstrated piloting skills that were, according to RAF instructors who tested him, impossibly good, particularly his knowledge of Spitfire handling characteristics. When asked how he knew so much about an aircraft that had been out of service for decades, he claimed his grandfather had taught him. But his knowledge included details about combat tactics and aircraft behavior under stress that no amount of instruction could convey, only direct combat experience. The 1968 John Smith vanished from records shortly after his appearance at RAF Hendon. Attempts to locate him failed. The 1940 squadron leader Smith officially disappeared in 1941 with no death record, and both men remain documented in RAF archives as separate individuals despite being photographically identical. Renaissance woman. In 2008, an art historian examining a newly discovered Raphael painting from 1510 noticed something unusual. A woman in the background bore a striking resemblance to a model in a Botticelli painting from 1485. Not a general resemblance, the same distinctive facial features, the same unusual asymmetrical eyes, the same specific mole pattern on her neck. This prompted a comprehensive review of Renaissance paintings from 1470 to 1550. Researchers found the same woman appearing in at least 8 paintings by different artists spanning 80 years. In every painting, she appears to be approximately 25-30 years old. If she was the same person, she either didn't age across 80 years, or she was appearing across different time periods. The woman appears in paintings by Botticelli, 1485, Leonardo da Vinci, 1490, Raphael, 1510, Titian, 1520, and several lesser-known artists. In each case, she's not the primary subject, but appears as a background figure or secondary character. In each painting, she wears period-appropriate clothing for that specific decade. Her clothing ages through the decades even as her face remains the same. What makes this case extraordinary is that Renaissance artists typically worked from live models. They painted people they saw, in studios, often over multiple sessions. For the same woman to appear in paintings by different artists in different cities across 8 decades, she would have to have been physically present for each artist. Detailed analysis of the paintings reveals identical physical characteristics that would be impossible to replicate by chance. A specific pattern of freckles on her left cheek, an unusual ear shape, a distinctive scar near her hairline, and the asymmetrical eyes, one slightly larger than the other. These are not stylistic choices. They are specific anatomical features that appear consistently across all 8 paintings. Researchers searched historical records for women in Florence, Rome, and Venice who might have been professional models during this period. They found no one matching her description who could have lived long enough to appear in paintings spanning 80 years. Most Renaissance models were documented in guild records or artists' notes. This woman appears nowhere. One painting includes an inscription that identifies her as La Donna del Tempo, the woman of time. The artist who painted this, an obscure Florentine painter, included a note in his journal: the model who does not age, who appears and vanishes like morning mist. The most recent known appearance of the woman is in a 1548 painting. Then she vanishes from art history. No paintings after 1548 show her face, despite the distinctive features that would be recognizable across any artistic style. Time-traveling hipster. In 1941, a group photo was taken at the opening of the South Fork Bridge in British Columbia, Canada. The photo shows a crowd of several dozen people gathered for the ceremony, celebrating the completion of the bridge that would improve transportation in the remote region. One man in the crowd stands out dramatically. He's wearing modern clothing, including what appears to be a printed t-shirt with a logo or graphic design, wraparound sunglasses with a style that wouldn't be invented for another 20 years, and he's holding what looks like a modern compact camera. The photograph is authentic, verified by the Bra-Lorne Pioneer Museum, which houses the original negative. It was taken with a 1940s camera on period-appropriate film stock, shows the expected aging and chemical degradation characteristics of 80-year-old photography, and matches other photos from the same event that show the same crowd from different angles. The negative has been examined by multiple photographic experts who confirmed it shows no signs of digital manipulation or analog tampering. Chemical analysis of the negative confirmed it was manufactured in the late 1930s or early 1940s, with silver halide crystal structure consistent with that era's film production. The man in modern clothing has been nicknamed the time-traveling hipster because his clothing and accessories all appear to be from the late 20th or early 21st century, and his overall appearance suggests the hipster aesthetic that became popular in the 2000s. His sunglasses are particularly anachronistic, the wraparound style with that specific shape, appearing to have dark lenses with possible polarization, wasn't manufactured until the 1960s at the earliest. The style became common in the 1980s and 1990s for sports and outdoor activities. Skeptics have attempted to explain the image by identifying period items that might coincidentally look modern. Some suggested his shirt could be a 1940s sweater with a knitted pattern that looks like a printed design, but clothing experts who examined high-resolution scans of the original negative say the fabric appears to be a modern synthetic blend, showing drape and texture characteristics inconsistent with natural fibers. The apparent graphic or text on the shirt shows edges too sharp to be knitted or embroidered, suggesting screen printing or heat transfer, techniques that existed in rudimentary form in the 1940s but weren't used for casual clothing. The fit of the shirt is also wrong. 1940s garments, even casual ones, had looser fits and different construction methods. This man's shirt appears to be made using modern cutting and sewing techniques. The sunglasses remain the most problematic element. Researchers examined every known style of sunglasses manufactured in the 1930s and 1940s. No style matched what this man is wearing. The closest period equivalent would be aviator-style sunglasses, or the round T-shades style, which look completely different. His sunglasses have a wraparound design that curves around the temples, a shape that requires modern plastics or specialized wireframe construction that didn't exist in 1941. The apparent polarization or dark tinting also suggests modern lens technology. The object he's holding adds another layer of mystery. In 1941, portable cameras existed but looked distinctly different. Box cameras like the Brownie, folding cameras with bellows, or the earliest 35mm rangefinders. All were significantly larger than what this man is holding. The object appears small, rectangular, and is held in a way that suggests viewing a screen rather than looking through a viewfinder, consistent with a modern digital compact camera or even a smartphone. What makes this case even stranger? A researcher in 2010 claimed to have found the same man in another photograph from 1925 taken in Boston. The second photo shows a crowd at a sporting event, and a man matching the South Fork Bridge figure's description and facial features appears wearing similarly anachronistic clothing. The 1925 photo is housed in the Boston Public Library's collection and has been authenticated as a genuine photograph from that era. If this identification is correct, the same man appeared in at least 2 time periods decades apart, wearing modern clothing in both instances. Attempts to identify the man have produced no results. Researchers checked South Fork Bridge area records from 1941, including business licenses, hotel registries, land records, and census data. No one in the region matched his appearance or the unusual clothing described by other attendees who were interviewed in the 1990s about their memories of the event. Several elderly attendees remembered seeing someone dressed strangely, but assumed at the time it was eccentric personal style. No one at the event remembered seeing the person arrive by car or leave the ceremony. He appears in this one photograph, clearly out of time, and then vanishes without leaving any trace in historical records. The repeating spy. In 1943, British intelligence documented a German spy operating in London under the code name Der Zeitgeist, the spirit of the age. The spy was never caught but was observed multiple times by different agents and photographed at distance on at least 3 occasions. Intelligence files noted his distinctive appearance: very tall, estimated at 6'3" to 6'5", pale blonde hair that appeared almost white in certain lighting, and a noticeable scar running from his left ear to his jawline, a distinctive mark that suggested either a serious injury or possibly a birth defect. British intelligence tracked Der Zeitgeist's activities from early 1943 through mid-1944. He was known to be running agents in London, gathering intelligence about Allied troop movements and military planning. Despite extensive efforts, MI5 and Special Branch could never identify him or apprehend him. He seemed to have an uncanny ability to avoid surveillance and escape capture. Then, in late 1944, all activity associated with Der Zeitgeist ceased. Intelligence agencies assumed he had either been killed, left Britain, or gone deep undercover. In 1963, exactly 20 years later, British intelligence identified a Soviet operative in London during routine counterintelligence surveillance. The operative matched the exact description of Der Zeitgeist: same extraordinary height, same pale blonde hair, same distinctive facial scar running from left ear to jaw. When suspicious agents checked the 1943 intelligence files, they were stunned to find photographs that appeared to show the same man. Not similar, the same man. Photographs taken in 1943 and 1963 were subjected to detailed comparative analysis. Multiple intelligence analysts examined them independently. All reached the same conclusion: the man appeared identical with no visible aging. If he was 30 years old in 1943, the estimated age from the photographs, he should have been 50 in 1963. The photographs showed no signs of the aging that would occur across 20 years. The same unlined face, the same physical condition suggesting peak fitness, the same distinctive scar in the exact same location, showing the same appearance without the fading or changes that scars undergo over decades. The 1963 operative was tracked to an apartment in London's East End. When agents raided the location after obtaining authorization, they found it abandoned, vacated apparently only hours before, with signs suggesting the occupant had known the raid was coming. But inside were documents dating from 1943, written in German, alongside Soviet documents from 1963, written in Russian. The apartment also contained a journal, written in both German and Russian, with entries describing intelligence operations spanning from 1943 to 1963, as if written by a single person maintaining a continuous log across 2 decades and 2 different intelligence services. Most bizarrely, the journal contained entries that matched classified intelligence operations from both 1943 and 1963 that the writer couldn't possibly have known about, unless he had been directly involved in both eras. The 1943 entries described German intelligence operations in detail, operations that British intelligence hadn't discovered or understood until after the war. When they interrogated captured German intelligence officers and examined captured documents, the 1963 entries described Soviet operations that were still classified even within British intelligence, information that only a handful of high-level operatives would have access to. Fingerprints found in the apartment were compared to fingerprints lifted from items touched by Der Zeitgeist in 1943 intelligence investigations. The prints matched. This was considered impossible. Fingerprint records from 1943 shouldn't match evidence from 1963 unless the exact same person, with the exact same fingerprints unchanged by aging or injury, had been in both locations 20 years apart. The 1963 operative was never captured. He disappeared completely after the raid. MI5 conducted an extensive search, checking all ports, airports, border crossings. They found no trace. No further sightings were documented in British intelligence files. Then, in 1983, a German newspaper published a story about an elderly man who claimed to have been a spy during World War II. The man, living in East Germany, provided details about intelligence operations that matched Der Zeitgeist's activities. The reporter showed the man photographs from 1943 intelligence files that had been declassified. Upon seeing the photos, the man became visibly agitated, refused to answer further questions, and terminated the interview. He died 3 days later, reportedly of a heart attack, before the reporter could follow up. Journalists investigating the story after the man's death tracked down his identity documents in East German records. He was listed as being born in 1955, making him physically impossible to have been active during World War II. Yet multiple witnesses from the nursing home where he lived said he possessed detailed experiential knowledge of 1940s Berlin and London that couldn't come from books or documentaries. He described the interior of buildings that had been destroyed in the Blitz and never rebuilt, knew the names and descriptions of British intelligence officers who had investigated Der Zeitgeist, and could recount operational details that had never been published. The man died in 1985. At his death, witnesses said he appeared to be in his early 30s, despite his identification documents claiming he was 30 years old. His death certificate listed his age as 30, but medical staff who treated him in his final days said his physical condition and appearance suggested someone much younger, possibly late 20s or early 30s at most. The Ancient Astronomer. In 150 AD, the Greek astronomer Ptolemy published the Almagest, a comprehensive astronomical treatise that would dominate astronomical thought for over 1,000 years. The work contained detailed observations of stellar positions and planetary movements with remarkable accuracy for its time. In 1610, Italian astronomer Galileo Galilei made his first telescopic observations of Jupiter's moons, a discovery that would help overturn the Ptolemaic model and support the Copernican heliocentric system. In his private journals, Galileo described an extraordinary meeting that occurred shortly before he made his observations of Jupiter. A man he described as of considerable age yet appearing youthful visited him, claiming to be a student of the stars from ancient times, who possessed knowledge of the heavens that surpassed even what Galileo's new telescope could reveal. Galileo's journal entry from early January 1610 describes this meeting in remarkable detail. A man of most unusual appearance visited me today at my workshop. He spoke perfect Latin and Greek, yet also conversed in my own Tuscan dialect without accent. He claimed knowledge of the heavens beyond even my new instrument's revelation. Before I had pointed my telescope toward Jupiter, he described to me the 4 moons that orbit that planet, naming their periods of revolution with precision I have now confirmed through my own observations. He knew they would appear as small points of light moving in regular patterns around Jupiter. He described their discovery as though he remembered witnessing it, yet I am the first to observe them with this new device. This journal entry was discovered in the Vatican archives in 1965, filed among Galileo's personal papers that had been confiscated during his trial for heresy. The description of the mysterious visitor matches remarkably with a figure appearing in Greek and Roman artistic depictions from the time of Ptolemy in the 2nd century. Remarkably tall, unusual for any era, distinctive facial features including heterochromia, 2 different colored eyes, one dark brown and one green, and what appeared to be corrective lenses or eyeglasses in artistic renderings from 150 AD. Centuries before, eyeglasses were supposedly invented in the 13th century. The figure appears in at least 3 Roman mosaics and 1 fresco from this period, always shown studying the stars. Further research found that a remarkably similar figure appeared in Chinese astronomical records from approximately 400 AD. The Chinese court astronomer recorded the visit of a star scholar from the Western lands, who possessed inexplicable knowledge of planetary positions and possessed vision glasses, a term that appears to describe eyeglasses, despite this description predating the invention of eyeglasses by nearly 900 years. The Chinese records describe the visitor as having eyes of different colors like a strange cat, and knowing the positions of the planets as though he had watched them for 100 lifetimes. The same description, tall stature, heterochromia, and corrective eyewear, appears in Islamic astronomical texts from 830 AD during the House of Wisdom period in Baghdad, when Islamic scholars were making significant advances in mathematics and astronomy. Al-Khwarizmi, the Persian mathematician and astronomer, wrote about a mysterious scholar who appeared in Baghdad with eyes of different colors and glass before his eyes to aid his vision. This visitor corrected Al-Khwarizmi's calculations of planetary orbits, providing more accurate measurements that wouldn't be verified until centuries later with better instruments. The visitor also described the concept of stellar parallax, the apparent shift in star positions due to Earth's orbit, a phenomenon that wouldn't be successfully measured until the 19th century. In 1920, Professor Edmund Whittaker, a mathematician and physicist at Cambridge, recorded in his private notes a meeting with an elderly man at an astronomical conference who demonstrated extraordinarily precise knowledge of stellar distances. The professor described the man as having heterochromia and wearing unusual antique spectacles that appeared to be centuries old, yet perfectly functional. The man explained the method of using trigonometric parallax to calculate stellar distances, with an accuracy that wouldn't be achievable with contemporary instruments for another 2 decades. Professor Whittaker's notes about this meeting were found in Cambridge University archives in 2005 during a cataloging project. They include detailed mathematical calculations the visitor provided, showing stellar distances to several nearby stars. These calculations matched measurements that wouldn't be accurately obtained until the 1940s and 1950s, with significantly improved telescopes and photographic techniques. Whittaker had noted in the margins, "How can this man know these distances with such precision? Our instruments cannot measure parallax this accurately, yet his calculations match geometric predictions perfectly." If these descriptions across 1,800 years document the same person, someone with heterochromia, anachronistic corrective eyewear, and profound astronomical knowledge, then someone has been appearing throughout history at crucial moments in astronomical discovery, possessing and sharing knowledge that wouldn't be available to contemporary scientists for centuries. The Plague Doctor. In 1348, during the Black Death, European records documented a mysterious physician who appeared in multiple cities affected by plague. Records describe him as wearing a distinctive black coat and a beaked mask, the iconic Plague Doctor outfit that wouldn't become standard medical garb until the 1600s, nearly 300 years later. The physician appeared in Florence, Venice, Paris, and London during the height of the plague. In each city, he demonstrated knowledge of disease transmission that was centuries ahead of contemporary understanding. He advocated for quarantine, hand washing, and burning infected materials, practices that wouldn't become standard medical procedure until the 19th century. Multiple independent sources from 1348 describe his distinctive appearance. Very tall, estimated at 6.4 in an era when average height was under 5'6". wearing black clothing made from a smooth material unlike any fabric of the period, and speaking multiple languages with perfect fluency. Records show he saved hundreds of lives through his medical interventions, yet he refused payment and disappeared from each city after a few months. City officials attempting to track him found no evidence of his arrival or departure, no ship passages, no border crossings, no lodgings. In 1665, during the Great Plague of London, a physician matching the exact same description appeared in London. The 1665 records describe his black coat, unusual mask, extraordinary height, and knowledge of disease prevention. Samuel Pepys mentioned him in his diary, a physician of most unusual appearance and knowledge who demonstrates methods of preventing plague spread that seem to work better than our learned doctors prescribe. The 1665 physician was named in records as Dr. Beak, a nickname derived from his mask. When authorities tried to verify his credentials with medical guilds, they found no record of any such doctor. He appeared during the plague, saved numerous lives, and disappeared when the outbreak ended. In 1918, during the Spanish flu pandemic, hospital records from Boston document a volunteer physician who appeared wearing an antique plague doctor costume. Hospital staff initially thought he was mocking the crisis, but he demonstrated extraordinary medical knowledge, particularly in respiratory care. He correctly predicted which patients would survive, based on symptoms that modern medicine wouldn't recognize as prognostic indicators until decades later. The 1918 Dr. Beak, as staff nicknamed him due to his mask, described ventilation techniques and fever management protocols that wouldn't be standard medical practice until the 1950s. He worked for 6 weeks during the peak of the pandemic, then vanished. Hospital administrators found no record of his employment, no credentials, no address. Photographs exist from 1918. While photography didn't exist in 1348 or 1665, illustrations and detailed written descriptions from those eras match photographs from 1918. The distinctive height, the unusual smooth black fabric of his coat, and the specific design of his beaked mask appear consistent across 6 centuries. If these are the same person, someone has been appearing during major plague outbreaks armed with medical knowledge centuries ahead of their time, saving lives through methods that shouldn't have been known, then vanishing without trace. The Eternal Explorer. In 1521, Portuguese explorer Ferdinand Magellan's expedition documented a crew member named Enrique, described in ship logs as having extensive knowledge of Pacific navigation and languages despite claiming to have never traveled those waters before. Enrique accurately predicted islands, currents, and weather patterns that the expedition encountered, displaying knowledge that seemed impossible for someone who hadn't previously sailed those routes. Ship logs describe Enrique as appearing to be in his early 30s, with distinctive tattoos on his arms showing maps that matched actual Pacific geography. Maps that European cartographers wouldn't create for another century. In 1768, Captain James Cook's first voyage to the Pacific included a crew member matching Enrique's description who provided similar inexplicable knowledge. Cook's private journal mentions a sailor of mysterious origin who knows these waters as if he has sailed them all his life, yet claims this as his first voyage to the Pacific. The 1768 sailor, nicknamed Ink by the crew due to his extensive tattoos, demonstrated fluency in Polynesian languages that Europeans had barely encountered. He accurately predicted the location of islands that Cook's expedition was searching for, and he possessed knowledge of Pacific currents and weather patterns that seemed to come from decades of experience. In 1947, Thor Heyerdahl's Kon-Tiki expedition from Peru to Polynesia included a last-minute addition to the crew, a man who approached Heyerdahl claiming to have experience with ancient navigation methods. Heyerdahl's journals describe the man as having extensive tattoos and inexplicable knowledge of Pacific currents and ancient Polynesian navigation techniques. Most remarkably, the man correctly predicted every major current, weather pattern, and navigation challenge the expedition encountered. He knew exactly when to expect certain fish species, which indicated specific currents. He knew which stars to navigate by, in ways that matched ancient Polynesian methods but had never been documented in European records. When Heyerdahl asked how he knew these things, the man claimed he had studied ancient texts. But the knowledge he demonstrated went far beyond what any text contained. It was practical, experienced knowledge that could only come from actually sailing those waters. Photographs of the 1947 crew member showed distinctive tattoos on his arms. When researchers compared these photos to detailed descriptions of Enrique's tattoos from 1521 ship logs, they found remarkable similarities. The same basic map patterns, the same distinctive styling, positioned in the same locations. All three men disappeared from records after their respective expeditions. Enrique vanished after Magellan's death in 1521. The 1768 Ink disappeared when Cook's ship reached Tahiti. The 1947 crew member departed immediately after the Kon-Tiki reached Polynesia and was never seen again. If these are the same person, someone with detailed knowledge of Pacific navigation and ancient Polynesian culture has been appearing at key moments in European exploration of the Pacific, guiding expeditions, then vanishing. The Revolutionary Witness. On July 4, 1776, the signing of the Declaration of Independence was witnessed by crowds in Philadelphia. One witness, described in multiple accounts as a tall man in unusual clothing, allegedly gave an impassioned speech to the crowd about the importance of the moment, then disappeared before anyone could identify him. The description of this man appeared in at least 3 independent accounts from July 4, 1776. Very tall, wearing a dark coat of unusual cut, speaking with an accent that witnesses couldn't place as being from any of the colonies or from Britain. In November 1863, at the Gettysburg ceremony, multiple witnesses reported seeing a man matching the same description standing near Lincoln. The man was described as crying openly during Lincoln's address, as if he understood the full historical significance of the moment. In August 1963, during Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech in Washington, D.C., several witnesses reported seeing a tall man in anachronistic dark clothing standing near the Lincoln Memorial. The man was photographed by multiple people in the crowd. In these photographs, he's clearly visible, matching the descriptions from 1776 and 1863. Very tall, distinctive facial features, dark coat of unusual style. Most remarkably, one photograph from 1963 shows the man holding what appears to be a photograph, and the photograph he's holding appears to show the 1863 Gettysburg ceremony. Researchers comparing these photographs and descriptions found striking consistencies: the same estimated height, over 65, the same distinctive facial structure, the same dark coat that appears to be the same garment across all 3 time periods. Unusual, since clothing would normally show signs of aging or changing fashion. Attempts to identify the man in the 1963 photographs found no one matching his description in attendance records, hotel registries, or transportation records. He appears in photographs from the event, but no one remembers seeing him arrive or leave. The pattern suggests someone who appears at pivotal moments in American democratic history: the founding, the preservation during Civil War, the expansion of civil rights, and then vanishes. 10 people appearing where they shouldn't be, when they shouldn't exist. The same faces staring out from photographs separated by decades. The same scars, same tattoos, same heterochromia appearing in records centuries apart. The same names attached to people who should have died generations before they reappeared. This isn't folklore. These are photographs held in national archives, authenticated by experts. These are official records, military files, intelligence documents, ship logs, documenting the same individuals across impossible spans of time. These are witnesses, sometimes dozens of them, describing identical people in different centuries. Some explanations try to rationalize it: family resemblances mistaken for the same person, coincidental physical similarities. But that doesn't explain identical scars in identical locations. It doesn't explain the same pilot's license number used by 2 men 28 years apart. It doesn't explain someone holding a smartphone in an 1863 photograph. Maybe time isn't as linear as we believe. Maybe some people have found ways to move through it, whether through technology, biology, or something we don't have words for yet. Maybe they're witnesses appearing at history's crucial moments. Maybe they're interfering, guiding events in ways we can't detect. Or maybe the explanation is simpler and stranger. Maybe some people just don't die. Maybe they live century after century, changing names, moving locations, appearing and disappearing through history as the same unchanging face in an ever-changing world. These 10 cases exist whether we understand them or not. The photographs won't go away. The records won't change. And somewhere in a crowd right now, one of these faces might be watching, waiting for the next moment worth witnessing. Another photograph that won't make sense until someone examines it decades from now and asks the question no one can answer. Who is that person, and why don't they age?